So today we're going to be making a brand new tier list, ranking every meta unit in Anime Last Stand, as of the recent Berserk update. Hopefully you enjoy the video or find it helpful. If you do, maybe leave a like or subscribe. But anyways, let's get into it. So in this video, we'll start off with the tier list I made in my last tier list video. If you want an explanation for everything you see here, make sure to go check that video out. I did have to move around a couple things to clear out space on the list for the new stuff we'll be talking about, and I did throw in Nagi and meta early. Now that Kirito left, we need somebody else for light and physical. Now before we get into the brand new stuff, all the Berserk units and Inuyasha, I do want to make a few changes to the list we already have. So first off, I'm going to move Fern down a little bit. I think I overrated her. She is really good for her own DPS, don't get me wrong. Her DPS is crazy. She does so much with her ability on auto. I think that the supporting value from Shadow and Yuta just a little bit better than Fern's supporting value in DPS overall. I'm also going to move Meliodas down a little bit. I think he's more dependent now on the teammates you run with him. The unit himself is not that crazy. He does have nukes that scale off the strongest thing in his range, so if you run him with good teammates he can be really good. And he does have Despair, but Despair is kind of more widespread now. I'll probably move him down to right below Itadori. Merliona, I think her name is Merliona. I'm also going to move her down to below Meliodas. I kind of overrated her. She's still really good for full AoE, Blue Flame, and kind of buffing Burn, but there are definitely better options in meta overall. Asta is going to move down to the bottom of the tier, falling off in my opinion. He is mostly dependent for his DPS on like rolling a good dot with his ability, because he has an RNG status effect rolling thing, and if you get unlucky he's pretty bad. The only thing Hikari really brings to the table is damage, and we're getting better options now. Move him down to decent right above Kashimo here. Erza I'm going to move down to above Asta here. Then Kefla I'm going to move down to decent right below Yorichi. Broly I'm going to move down to decent right below Kefla. And then at Goku I'm going to move down to decent right below Broly. Finally I'll move Harabelle up a bit in support. She's still very situational because she relies on water units in her range, but she is a little bit better than these two I think. Now we should be ready to actually get into the brand new units with update 62. Starting off with the Black Swordsman. When this guy first dropped, a lot of people thought he looked kind of mid, and I can understand where they're coming from. When you look at just his stat line, he doesn't do the best damage for how slow he's attacking, but most of his value definitely comes from his passives. I think it's the Outrage passive that is actually the bulk of his damage in particular, and if you optimize his SPA for Rupture as well, his Rupture is doing a lot of damage. There's a lot of things that kind of play into building this guy right for him to actually be good, but if you have him on like a damage skill tree to optimize the damage from Outrage and also to get his SPA up to 14 to be perfect for Rupture, he can be very, very strong, and he is actually full AoE. So that's always nice, of course. I definitely put him in meta overall and right below Ichigo, probably. This guy's definitely underrated. Inuyasha. So ranking this guy is going to be a little bit weird, because his main passive and his kit overall is kind of based on RNG. So the way he works is periodically he's going to go into a different form, where he's actually doing way better damage because he gains poison and has better stats overall. But in that form, his attacks have a chance to backfire. So if you get unlucky, he can kind of be really stinky. Otherwise he's just kind of okay. I mean, even with like his good form, if you don't get unlucky, I would say overall he's going in decent and probably right behind Wukong here. EA is also pretty weird because most of his value comes from after maxing him out, from like unlocking his passive and going into a different mode as well. Overall, I don't really like the unit. He does have Black Flame, which can do really good damage over a long period of time, and his whole thing is like having 14 SPA and attacking really slow, but doing more Black Flame damage, and he's not that bad for just raw DPS. I mean, his damage on like his initial upgrades is pretty bad because you don't have good SPA for Black Flame, but once he gets maxed out, his damage is okay. It costs like a total of 500k if I remember correctly. I mean, he's alright. I don't know, this guy's just kind of decent. I'd put him like right below Goku probably in decent. He can be okay if you build him right for his Black Flame, but it's kind of hard to get that up and running fully. Now we have what I think is the main unit of the update kinda. We have all three forms we're going to rank here. So first, kind of like the overall ranking of him, should you use him on a team. Then we also have the support form and the dark form to kind of rank them respectively and see like which ones are kind of valuable for what they do. So overall Griffith with the light form and dark mode accounted for, with how you have to get cash to trigger them and everything, all his passives that I checked out in the Berserk unit showcase. I personally think overall he is pretty good. I would put him probably in meta overall and right below Shadow. Actually overall ranking of the unit himself, and if you should bring him on your team, I would say he'd go about here in the meta overall. Now the individual forms of Griffith, we have the light form and the dark form. I would say that the light form is actually very close to the top of the game in the support tier. He's a very good buffer, he's got a high damage buff for units in his range. He costs only 50k to get up and running, which I guess is pretty expensive. You don't need to upgrade him at all. He does actually have not the worst damage in the world if you max him out, and he does buff himself depending on how many units are in his range, so like the more units he's buffing, the more he's going to be doing. And overall he's a really good unit, I'd say towards the top of support, and very strong. Now the dark mode, I think the dark mode is a pretty cool gimmick, and I really like the design, but it's not very viable. In most cases you don't want to use it. So the Dark Griffith can be kind of weird. If you fully complete the Griffith quest line, which I do have a video on how to do, if you guys are confused, you'll get access to the new Griffith passives and everything. And you can summon the Dark Mode with like a minimum of 100k, I think, and you need to have Guts in his range. So you need to bring Guts with him to even get the Dark Mode, but 100k is kind of the base value. You need to have 100k cash to even spawn this guy in. And to get the most value out of Dark Griffith, you want to actually sacrifice about 10 million cash into him, or it might be 7.5 after you fully complete the quest. So he's very expensive. He's definitely an infinite unit only in my eyes, because like, you can go for the 100k for him, but he's not that great. He does have like a little RNG passive with the Eclipse as well, which is kind of weird. Not weird, it's cool. I really like the Eclipse as a mechanic, but I don't know, RNG passives for a unit that takes a long time to set up, it's just not very good. I would say this guy's not that great. He's going in meta infinite because he is pretty good for infinite runs for just raw damage if you have the money to set him up, but otherwise, I don't know, he's not very viable in other content at all. Now we have the Divine boosted units, so we got Kirito and Saitama. Now Kirito, we moved him away from meta early, because that's where he was before. If I'm being honest, not much changed about this unit, like, almost the same exact unit. They changed a couple things that don't really make a difference. In functionality, Kirito feels the exact same in my opinion, but he did actually get abilities on the 2 final upgrades, which are going to make him a lot stronger. So I think his DPS is also just higher in general, but if you use his abilities, he's going to go into different modes, which are going to make him a lot stronger. He's got a full AoE one and a cone AoE one, and the cone AoE is just really good damage. Overall, he's like a very crit heavy unit. You want to run him with a crit build, and he can do really good DPS. So I'd say Kirito's kind of meta overall. He does have a nuke now as well with his transformation, which before he only had that if you ran him with Asuna. He's going in meta overall. His DPS is really good, and I'd put the Divine boosted Kirito probably right about here. Now finally, the Saitama Divine boost, and in my opinion, he's got a little bit more going on than Kirito. He's a little bit more interesting in that way. He is still going to be primarily just a raw DPS unit. He's going to be fully AoE on placement and on final upgrade, so they're very good for map coverage. But the way he works is like, he's got a couple RNG passives as well. When he's missing a crit, he can do a barrage thing, and when he does the barrage enough of times, he gets like access to an ability. There's going to be a new mode where he attacks faster, does less damage, but has a bunch of different stuff he gains. I don't know, he's a weird one to explain. Saitama's got a lot going on, but I'd say most of his value comes from just really good full AoE DPS on top of having good abilities as well, because he does actually have a spammable nuke with, I believe, a not global cooldown. And he does have another passive where if a nuke is used that I think isn't his, he's going to actually mimic it for a portion of the damage up to 5 trillion. So he can be really good for infinite runs for sure. He can kind of mimic nukes, and he does have good nukes himself. Overall though, I'd say his meta overall is kind of a raw DPS unit with strong nukes, and a little bit expensive to fully get going, but overall, pretty alright. And here we have the final rankings. Of course, at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. Take everything with a grain of salt. Don't be too mad in the comments, but do let me know what you think. There are a lot of like nuanced things with the units we got this update. Like, for example, you need to have the right build on Hiei for his SPA to be good for Black Flame, and the right build on Guts for the SPA to be good for Rupture. But I personally think these rankings are pretty accurate from the testing I've done so far. Anyways, thank you to my channel members for making this video possible. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next one. And have a great day.